Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Welcome in. Happy Monday. It's a very happy Monday. Why is it a happy Monday? Well, apparently we're going to get like 3 to 4 inches of rain. It's a happy day, I guess, because I just keep continuing to be right over and over again about this whole Mother Nature absolutely hates us in the greater Philadelphia area. It is absolutely atrocious weather apparently coming this way. So that's not the reason that today's so great. Today's great because we have actual topics to discuss. Now, I know the last couple of episodes, I've kind of floated some things out there. I've kind of gone a little bit off the, you can't say off the reservation in 2025. I've gone off the board the last couple of episodes with different things going on. And, we've done a little bit of talking about, we talked about Dexter Resurrection last week. We talked about the idea of F1. We talked about Christian Horner getting sacked by Red Bull Racing. But today is a very Philly-centric show because there are actual Philadelphia news topics to talk about. Now, I will point out that at some point there is a non-zero chance that I will delve into my thoughts on what's going on in Philly Sports Talk Radio right now, because you may have missed this, right? And I think we kind of briefly touched on this last week, but there are some very interesting things happening over with what WIP is doing with this back and forth, this head-to-head between DeCamara and Jack Fritz. And then a little passive grenade was lobbed. Pulled the pin, tossed it in, and was waiting to see if there was going to be any shrapnel from the Fanatic, where Bill Colarulo seemed to kind of call that out a little bit on the side. So we might get to that a little bit later on in the week. Wednesday's show, I can tell you, is going to be interesting because when we do the show on Wednesday in the afternoon, the NHL schedule will have dropped. And so a lot of people have been clamoring for whatever reason. I'm not a huge schedule release guy, especially with the NHL, but a lot of people, a lot of Flyers fans have been getting very excited about what could happen, what could be with the Flyers. Again, I don't think it matters all that much, but I will happily dive into it on Wednesday because people have been asking. So we have that little bit of news and notes for Wednesday. I think I'll have a guest on later this week. I'm not positive. It'll be Wednesday or Friday is the thought. But a lot of stuff to get into. Of course, the MLB All-Star festivities getting underway. We're going to talk about that as well because a few Phillies stood up for some snubs on the team, namely Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez. We'll get there in a little bit as well. We also have a lot of other stuff to get to because, my friends, woof. We got to start with some Jalen Hurts news, which we're going to get to. That is at the top of the show. That's where we have to lead. And then we'll get into some Phillies talk. Now, I know, and I see here, Amadeo saying that, Big Bet Bob and Anthony Sanfilippo are still doing their thing over on Phightin Words. But the unfortunate reality of things is they were supposed to start at 2. I don't know if they started directly at 2 or not, but I do know for a fact that they had a little bit of a later start, and those guys like to go. Now, they're excited about the Phillies. They're excited about the All-Star game. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But first, we're going to check out. We got Ford over here saying he's going to tune in. That has to get the kids from camp. What camp? Ford, you got to let me know what camp. We live close enough together. Interested in which camp's going on. Not a big camp family here. We're just not. Connor Buss says, good afternoon, Russ. Show recommendation if you want something funny and dumb, Broad City. Where can I find this show? I'll tell you, we definitely got into Tires Season 2. We are, I think, 5 episodes into Season 2 of Tires now. I can now also report back that I've seen Episode 2 of Dexter Resurrection, which was sensational. And boy, oh boy, they have kind of figured out a way with the second sequel to the original series to get a lot of juice out of the orange or whatever you want. Dexter Resurrection has been sensational, and I was wrong. Episode 3 drops this Sunday, so there's not even a week off. That's very exciting stuff. If you're a Dexter fan, you can let me know. If you came here with a recommendation for a show, you can also drop that in the comments. Now, I want to get to what is some of the biggest news of the day, because I kind of floated out there that there's this Jalen Hurts news, there's some Philly stuff, and then we had breaking news right as the show went underway. And I'm actually kind of half tempted to go there really quickly because it is interesting, and it includes some people that we've heard from at different points throughout the year, and I've brought up on the show throughout the year, and it's actually going to work really beautifully. You wait till you see the transition here, because FS1 has chosen to make some significant changes to their programming. That was gross. That was a sneeze. I muted myself, though, so that was good. Good on me. FS1 is making some significant changes to a bunch of the shows that are on their air. And so this first got reported over at The Athletic by Andrew Marchand, who's usually at the forefront of a lot of this news. Joy Taylor is out. She is out at Fox Sports. So we're going to actually, let's throw it there really quick. I'm in respect, I guess, out of respect for the paywall that is known as The Athletic vis-a-vis the New York Times. We won't show all of this story, but we are going to kind of dive into some of the details. Joy Taylor is out at Fox Sports as the network cancels 3 shows, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. If you remember, there was quite the scandal earlier this year, right? Or was that the end of last year? I think it was earlier this year. I still can't believe it's like halfway through July. Feels like the year just started. But there was the scandal involving Joy Reid a few months ago, where there was this idea that there was somebody who was a higher up that maybe she was trying to get on the good side we'll say, and she may or may not have said some things that could have gotten her into a lot of hot water. And then there were some things about Emmanuel Acho, and there's some allegations there about the two of them, and it wasn't a great situation. And we broke it down on the show, in fairness, and we did a great job breaking it down on the show. But I will tell you, I am not surprised by this, because when that news broke, and again, you can go back to the podcast feed, or you can go to the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. You can find the episode where I dove into all the allegations, and there were some really concerning things in there that Joy Reid allegedly said that it's not ideal. We're not rehashing it here, but I'm not surprised that she wasn't brought back to FS1. But there are 3 shows that are now effectively donezo. One of them we're actually going to cite on today's show, oddly enough. But the one that is the probably the biggest headline is Speak, which is a show that she's been hosting with Paul Pierce. And it's a show that also has featured Keyshawn Johnson. So that show is gone. A show called The Facility is also gone. We've talked about that show before. LaShawn McCoy has appeared on that show. That one is also done. And Craig Carton, who left a job at WFAN in New York to go and start this like morning show on FS1. It got rebranded at some point. I had no idea. That's like how out of it I've been on FS1. But his show now got canceled as well. So I'll just kind of hit some of the big notes here. But as I said, like Taylor co-hosted Speak with Keyshawn Johnson and Paul Pierce. Her contract was up, not renewed by Fox Sports. There's no clarity here on Keyshawn Johnson or Paul Pierce's status with Fox Sports, with FS1. If Paul Pierce's contract is up, is there a lot of value to keep him there? I don't know. Would NBC be interested in bringing in Paul Pierce? Could ESPN look to bring him back? I'm not sure. Keyshawn, I thought, was an interesting one here. And like maybe if Keyshawn, can he find a spot on one of the panels on Fox NFL Sunday? Could you find a role for him with college football? Can you find a role with him if you're one of the other networks that has rights to college football or to pro football? Like, could that happen? It remains to be seen. I'm not positive yet. But it's interesting. These are all interesting notes. Now, as this mentions, Colin Cowherd, The Herd, remains at noon. First Things First with Nick Wright, Chris Broussard. That show remains at 3 o'clock. They're probably going to do some more content in the place of the 3 shows that have been axed. But it is kind of an interesting shift. And Craig Carton's show getting axed is pretty wild. Will he go back to WFAN? No one seems to know. That show, if you remember, that network or radio station, it was kind of humming along for a good long while. It seemed a little bit surprising that he would have left that gig to go to FS1, but he chose to, and now it hasn't worked out. Other notable names who've been involved with the facility, which is now also canceled. Emmanuel Acho, who we talked about on the show. Chase Daniel, who had some of the worst commentary on the Eagles this past season. James Jones, LaShawn McCoy. Where do those guys go? Where do they end up? Are they going to try to build new programming around those guys? Who the hell knows? But it's interesting. And the reason that I bring up these shows is because we are actually going to cite a couple of them, because if nothing else, Fox Sports has figured out a way to give this show a little bit of context throughout the football season, because there have been some atrocious takes on your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles. And now I'm just realizing I didn't bring the comments up. Comments are going to go right here. So as you comment over on YouTube, Facebook, and X, if you click the video, go into Periscope mode, place your comments, it'll start showing up here. We have a bunch in, but it'll pick up from now on. The idea of the former athletes being the guys, and sometimes the ladies on these panels, but often it's guys. The former athlete being the crux and the focal point of these shows. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You see guys like Dan Orlovsky, who played in the past, finding a lot of success on ESPN. We'll actually hear from him a little bit later on in the show as well. You have some guys who get themselves in a little bit of hot water. Ryan Clark has gotten himself into a couple of things in the last month or so that have been kind of questionable. Shannon Sharp, most notably, former player who got kind of embroiled in a scandal of sorts of his own. Pat McAfee has probably the biggest sports show, biggest daytime sports show in the country, former player. The whole show's built around him. But when you get into these studio setups, these studio shows where there's the one host and then 3 or 4 of these guys that try to, jockey back and forth, unfortunately, it feels like if you don't have the charisma or if you don't have the insight, you then have to kind of go to what's going to be the biggest take I can drop at any given time to then get a little bit of shine on the show, to get a little bit of spotlight on the show. And it's tricky because some of the guys that I rattled off, they're like, Emmanuel Acho has had a few good points sometimes, and then a lot of really dumb takes. Chase Daniel has just had some egregiously bad takes on the Eagles especially. I don't know why. LaShawn McCoy's been a little bit hit or miss. Will Fox look to figure out a way to keep those guys on and maybe try to build a show around them a little bit differently? Maybe. I just don't know what the... Fox Sports is in this weird thing, right? Colin Cowherd's show does well, right? Because it's a simulcast. It's got TV. It's got a radio component. He's still a very well-liked guy, well-respected guy. Not everybody loves him. Not everybody hates him. He certainly gets the conversation going. He's very good at what he does. I actually think he's the best one who does it at a national scale in that kind of role. Nick Wright figures out ways to get people talking about his show. There's a reason that show hasn't been taken off, and it's at 3 o'clock, which is an important time. It continues to work. These morning shows are not giving a good enough lead-in to Colin Cowherd, and then, after Cowherd's show, you go to Nick Wright's show. Those morning shows did not do a good enough job of building an audience throughout the morning to kind of lead into the herd. So then it makes sense as a network executive that you'd say, all right, you know what? Let's kind of shake this thing up a little bit. Let's try to change what these panels are. Maybe you're changing the dynamics. I don't think you're going to get into like an X's and O's kind of show with these guys. I don't know what they're going to do. But I don't blame Fox Sports for saying, all right, it doesn't work. You have to change it up. But there are a lot of big personalities, a lot of big names. Mark Schlereth, I guess is going to also be out there. Is he going to get kicked from the Breakfast Ball show that was formerly the Craig Carton show? Is he going to land somewhere? Who the hell knows? It's a weird time at FS1. It is. Like, do you guys remember when FS1 started? Because I do. I remember being in an apartment. I think it was right when I started teaching. I remember watching Crowd Goes Wild, because remember, it couldn't be The Crowd Goes Wild, because that was a show in Australia. It was Crowd Goes Wild, and Regis Philbin was the host. And I remember when FS1 switched. I think it actually started, the FS1 first show was Crowd Goes Wild. It was an afternoon show. There was like I forget what the channel prior to it was, but like the branding changed, and then it launched into this new afternoon show. And I remember sitting there being like, why the hell is Regis Philbin hosting a sports show? But it was actually kind of fun. That had, I guess Jason Gay was on that panel. What was her name? I'll figure it out. There were a few people on the panel that were like interesting, and they'd usually have like a comedian or somebody would come on, and it felt like a different take on a sports show. And it didn't ultimately end up working out, but it's fine. Colin Cowherd's kind of figured out a way to like make himself the guy at FS1. Nick Wright, to some extent, has kind of made himself an invaluable piece of that puzzle. Like, if Nick Wright's show were to get canceled and he lands on ESPN, like, what exactly is he going to do? It's going to be a lot of the same kind of, talking head segments. It's going to be the same kind of, like, round table discussion. I don't think anything's really going to change. Colin Cowherd's figured out a way to get Fox to continue to pay him when ESPN reportedly has been, like, willing to offer him a bag to come back to, Disney. And it hasn't worked. And so he's stayed over at Fox, and he's very happy. And he launched his own like podcast network and vertical and everything. And he's finding a lot of success. But at FS1, they've got to figure out what those mornings are going to look like. I'm not in a spot where I'd say that like any of the names that I kind of outlined there are must-haves if you're trying to rebuild that morning lineup. It almost feels like maybe you have to change things up. Like, why couldn't you do a morning show that's a little bit more fun, a little bit less sporty, right? And try to go for like more of a general morning show that plays well on TV, that maybe is a simulcast. Could you see a Fox Sports 1 say, all right, let's come into an arrangement with a leading sports market and just simulcast their show? I don't know who has one that you would do it with. I can't imagine WFAN's going to, bend over backwards to try to do a simulcast on FS1 or vice versa, but it would be an interesting take. It's an interesting idea. I just don't know what they're going to do. Amadeo says the Russ Joy Show on FS1. Absolutely not. No. Not me. Not me. Ain't me. There's no chance. Could I have fun with a show on FS1? I don't even know. I don't know what a TV show would look like. I curse too much. I can't see it. Peter Tom Willis is here. Says Coward is constantly wrong, but he's intelligent with the spin. I think he's a really bright guy. Of all the people who go on to those kind of shows and do the simulcast radio TV shows, he to me is the best. Like, if you were to sit me down and give me 6 different shows that kind of fit the bill, I would tell you each and every time, that's the guy. That's the one that if I were doing a show, I'd want my show to be the most like his. I like what he does. So I get why FS1 is willing to continue to back up the Brinks truck to get him to stay. If he were to have left, like, remember the Rich Eisen show was kind of getting brought into the ESPN umbrella, getting brought under that umbrella is going to be an ESPN Plus thing. If Colin Coward had come back to ESPN, then it raises all kinds of questions about what happens with McAfee's show. Is there a way to make both of those coexist? Is there a way to jockey the time so that McAfee leads into Coward, or Coward leads into McAfee? And does one have to go to ESPN 2? Do you have them running head-to-head? Sense that Coward stays where he's at, Fox gives him a bag, but it feels like ESPN at some point is going to want to bring him back. At some point, like, everybody has a price. We'll see. Jim Grasso says, these national sports TV shows are a dying breed. City and team-specific on-demand content is king. Well, it's an interesting take, too, because if you think about it, we've seen an almost like oversaturation at the local level with a lot of sports shows, right? Like, you can find a bevy of podcasts, YouTube shows, social media shows. You can find things on TikTok. You can find things through short-form content that all talk about a lot of the same things. So much of it is just trying to figure out, is there a different lane? Like, this is where maybe later in the week we'll kind of talk about the difference between how WIP and the Fanatic are going after it in the afternoons. But like, you have WIP kind of building up this thing between DeCamera and Fritz where it's a lot of fun. It's kind of nonsensical, but like, it's fun. And then they kind of push you to their YouTube channel to actually see it in full. But like, it is the worst part of the sports calendar, right? Like, the MLB All-Star break is the worst time of the sports calendar. There's almost nothing going on. Even if you wanted to be somebody who says, oh, the FIFA Club World Cup, that's exciting. That's over. So it all comes down to All-Star game, and you have, if you don't care about the All-Star game, you don't care about the home run derby, your team isn't playing for a few days. And if you are a baseball-only fan and you can't get excited about football talk or hockey talk or basketball talk, this is it for you. It's the worst time of the year. So, wow, Jeffrey Epstein checking in from beyond the grave. How about that? With an amen. All right. Jeffrey, if you have your list, though, and you want to pass the list over to us, by all means you can. If there is a list, that is. We've been told that there was a list. It was on somebody's desk, but then the list doesn't exist. If you could just clarify that, that'd be swell. I don't know who has the list. I don't have the list. Do you have the list? Does anybody have the list? Peter Tom Willis also says, agree 100% with Jim. I'm in Albuquerque. I bagged on national shows 2 months ago. Philly pods is the way to go. You remember, like, way back when, right? Way back when, there was a time that there were a couple of potential investors that were looking at trying to launch multiple markets of like local daily podcasting stuff. And PHLY, founded by All City, they've gone that route. And they've, depending on the market, depending on the sport, depending on the show, they found varying levels of success. I'd almost argue it's really hard to do a daily show where you're talking about one team and one team only. Because when you hit the offseason, when you hit the real, cold, dead offseason, the idea of like going into a studio and doing a 1, 2, 3, 4 hour show on one team only seems kind of like a living hell, kind of like a nightmare. If you have a little bit of flexibility to talk about all the sports, it's a little bit different. It's always funny because you talk to some of the people who do radio and who have gotten out of radio, and they talk about what it's like to be at this time of the year and how hard it is to come up with content for 4 hours. That's where I start kind of going back to like the Josh Ennis and Tony Bruno days where like, yeah, there was sports on that show, but there was just a lot of hilarity and nonsense that was going on around the show that made the time fly. So I get why WIP is kind of doing what they're doing with Fritz and DeCamera. And at the same time, you know, then you get the fanatic kind of saying, well, we talk about sports here. We're going to get into that later this week because I think I'm going to bring somebody on who's going to have some actual thoughts about the difference in approach. We'll see ultimately if it matters when the ratings book comes out for the summer. Let's see. Chris Freed says, I miss the days when the Tour de France mattered. Has it mattered at all since Lance Armstrong got out of the game and was, you know, caught doping? Because like I feel like once that happened, the Tour de France and anything around it just kind of died. Any of the excitement just kind of went out the door. But I could be wrong. Chris Freed also says, a 5-day-a-week sports talk show are obsolete as TV and radio stations. 2 to 3 episodes are the future. So 5-day-a-week sports talk shows. I don't know if he means like something like The Facility and something like Speak that just got canceled, or if he means about like a specific team, but it is kind of tough. I could do this show 5 days a week if we did a lot more ridiculous stuff off the wall like we did last week. And even stuff like this where we talk about media, because that's the mission statement of the show, is to talk about Philly sports, national sports, and dissect the media that cover them. But like the idea of just going out and trying to chop up just the Phillies here 5 days a week, like it's not of interest to me. I'm also not positive that it's really of interest to a lot of you either. That's why we get into some of the hilarity and some of the nonsense on this show. Kind of mix it up a little bit. Because if you want a Philly-specific show, you go to Phightin Words or to one of like the 7,000 other Phillies podcasts. If you want flyers, I mean, you certainly come here, but you could go to Snow the Goalie or one of the, well, there's only one Flyers podcast, but you could go to that. If you like Sixers talk, there are certainly a number of shows to pick from. Same thing with Eagles. Everybody has to differentiate in their own way. Peter Tom Willis is here, says, Tour died with Lance. Only idiots like me who bike wash. I have a friend who is really into cycling, and so he's right there with you. So that's 2 of you. Amadeo also says, still waiting for the Sheets review. I will tell you, I had somebody reach out to me not that long ago who apparently works for Sheets and has made a few promises to me that I am going to hold them to, and I am incredibly excited about. More on that if and when we get across the finish line with, you know, the Sheets getting built in Limerick Township, but it did get the approval. So I fully expect a Sheets, and I fully expect to do a review about that Sheets. Okay. Now, we started the show with a little bit of a media point and talking about the fine folks at FS1 and a few of the shows that got canceled, including The Facility. And it's funny because there was a list that was put out by ESPN, and this list was a survey of NFL executives, coaches, and scouts, not players, executives, coaches, and scouts. And it was really the biggest news of the day, at least in my mind, was where Jalen Hurts ended up, because it shouldn't totally come as a surprise, but boy, oh boy, Jalen Hurts got disrespected again. And now listen, I'm not here to just ride or die every day defending the honor of Jalen Hurts. But I will tell you that, like, when something just seems totally nonsensical and mostly bullshit, like, I'm going to call it as such. This list comes out from ESPN, and they have Jalen Hurts listed at number 9. And I cannot fathom how they got to Jalen Hurts being the 9th best quarterback in the league. And if you remember, we've kind of dissected these things before, where you have Joe Burrow really high up on these lists. You end up seeing guys like Jaden Daniels jump up high on a list. You see a Justin Herbert jump up high on a list. And so I want to kind of break this all down. Not that long ago, we got into one of these rankings, but I want to go to this one because this is the thing that I feel like finally kind of broke me and broke at least a few of the people that we're going to hear from. And I'm actually going to start with where the list first got discussed today, which was over with the folks over on Get Up. And so we have the beautiful dulcet tones of Dan Orlovsky, Peter Schrager, and Damian Woody. I want to get into what these guys had to say, though, about this top 10 list. So your top 10, it's Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels. Those are your top 5. Number 6, Matthew Stafford, then Justin Herbert, Jared Goff at number 8, Jalen Hurts, your reigning Super Bowl MVP at number 9, Baker Mayfield at number 10. I remember it now. It was the Chris Sims thing. Chris Sims did his dumb list, and he put Jalen Hurts really far down, and he got what he wanted, which was engagement on his nonsense content. But let's get into whether or not the people that get paid to be the experts on the sport, how did the Get Up crew feel? And then we're going to get over to the facility, which is now canceled, but we're going to kind of do like the Viking funeral, right? We're going to light the arrow on fire. We're going to push the thing off, push the facility. We'll put the facility on a raft, and then we're going to take the flaming arrow and we're going to launch it into the sky and watch as it burns off in the distance. Before we get there, we're going to start with Get Up, though, because Orlovsky and Damian Woody and Peter Schrager kind of dove into this, and I just don't understand how Jalen Hurts is number 9. I still fail to understand it, and believe it or not, Damian Woody is going to be the voice of reason. So make of that what you will. All right, we're going to get in and out. Remember, as we do these reaction things, we kind of get in and out on the video. All right, let's go over, and let me know in the comments what you think about Orlovsky's take, Woody's take, and Schrager's take. Here we go.
But I think the evaluation is Justin Herbert in Philadelphia, what would he be in comparison to?
You're good with Jaden 5 and Hurts 9?
I am.
Okay.
Yep.
That's offensive. First of all, the notion that Hurts is 9 is ridiculous. Jaden Daniels, really exciting quarterback. Everybody's thrilled for Washington that they have a young stud quarterback, and there's not a Mike Shanahan to send him back out in a playoff game and watch him shred his knee up twice. So, all right, Washington has that going for them. But Orlovsky says, fine. Daniels at 5 is great. Hurts at number 9 is perfectly fine. But we had that kind of like whataboutism. We have that hypothetical. Oh, what would the Eagles look like with Justin Herbert? Would Justin Herbert be a significantly better quarterback by the numbers if he played in Philadelphia? And then what we'll eventually get to here is, well, would Hurts have actually been any good in a situation other than the Eagles? Let's keep going.
Damian, what are your thoughts?
When I first saw the list, 2 things jumped out at me. Lamar at 4 and Jalen Hurts at 9. It was the fact that I'm a guy.
Would you bury yourself?
I'm a guy. And Mike Singletary, what Mike Singletary said, I want winners.
Yeah.
Winning is important. So Damian Woody, good on him. Former Pat, Lion, and Jet, 2-time Super Bowl champ. Okay, we'll keep going.
I want winners. Yes, is the infrastructure in Philadelphia great? Absolutely. But I also saw with my own 2 eyes with Jalen Hurts, this man outplayed Patrick Mahomes in 2 different Super Bowls.
No question.
Outplayed the number 1 guy on our list in 2 different Super Bowls.
The biggest moment.
A very important moment, by the way. When all the chips are down, when you are playing in the most important game in the number 1 viewed sport in this country, Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes twice. And yet somehow is number 9 on this list. Okay, we'll keep going.
And the biggest moment.
Lamar and Allen don't.
When we talk about quarterbacks.
By the way, I'm not positive, but I think this is an iPhone being used, and this is center stage. I'll explain it in a sec.
We always talk about moments.
So you want him to
moments.
be where? You want him to be where? You want him to be where?
No,
Why is it zooming on Schrager? He's not talking. It's because he moved. Maybe I'll put on, hold on, let me see. I could put on center stage here. We'll all get kind of wobbly. Hold on, here we go. Whoa, see that? See how the camera just started moving? Whoa, if we go over here, in theory it's supposed to follow me. It's not following me. Oh, hey, what's up? How you doing? But if I come back over here, it's going to follow me over here too. I don't understand like why it went to Schrager, but anyway, I'm turning this thing off. All right, here we go. Back over to the panel.
No, I'm talking Justin Herbert. That was my one when I was looking at the list.
Herbert looks good though. He looks good in shorts.
If you're building them in the
That is a hell of a backhanded compliment from Schrager. And it's accurate. Herbert looks great in shorts. Like when the games don't matter and you're just watching the guy sling the ball around, he looks great. Then he gets out on the field. The results aren't there. For as much as people want to make Justin Herbert like a top 5 quarterback, or in this case, a top 7 quarterback, like the potential and fitting the archetype of what people seem to think a successful multi-time Super Bowl winning quarterback is supposed to look like and have the skill set of, that has not yet resulted in a Super Bowl for Justin Herbert. Hasn't even really amounted to playoff success. We'll keep going.
Lab, that's the guy you want.
Okay, but
that's the guy you want.
Let's have a fair conversation.
And Woody there is right. Of all the guys on the list, the one who looks the most like what you would build in a lab, again, the look, the strength, the size, the skill set, at least conceptually, the high upside, Herbert is he's your example. I mean, I think you can make a case that Burrow's pretty close to that. Allen has more of the legs than Herbert and Burrow both do. So if you count the legs against the quarterback, that he's not as much of a pocket passer because he's looking to use his legs. All right, I guess fine. But like Herbert is supposed to be the guy that's like your exemplar model. All right, we'll keep going. Oh shoot, I clicked the wrong thing. All right, well, let's keep going here. This is about it.
That was my one when I was looking at the list.
Herbert looks good, though. He looks good in shorts.
If you're building him in the lab, that's the guy you want.
Okay, but
that's the guy you want.
Let's have a fair conversation.
Oh, we got two hands up from Orlovsky.
Give me the 3 starting receivers in Los Angeles last year.
So now we're counting. We're counting how good a quarterback is based on the talent that's been placed around them. We're actually now disqualifying players that win because they have good players around them. So the fact that the Eagles have been able to build a damn good offense consisting of a consistent and excellent offensive line, they have the best running back from a year ago in Saquon Barkley in the backfield. They have 2 number ones in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and a very good tight end when he's healthy in Dallas Goedert. That now disqualifies Hurts. Hurts actually sucks, apparently. You don't know that. But apparently Hurts sucks. Any quarterback could go in there. Even Chase Daniel. Well, he doesn't have a job anymore. So maybe Chase Daniel could come back and play for the Eagles after he stole money as the backup quarterback here. Maybe Chase Daniel could go out and put up the same numbers that Jalen Hurts could, because I don't know if you know this or not. If you have good players on your team, it means that you inherently stink or you're not as good as everyone would like to believe. Okay, so that's interesting. So we're going to... Okay, Justin Herbert. Orlovsky's whole point is predicated on, can you name the wideouts? Okay, Schrager. Enter Schrager.
Hard to come up with those names. Okay,
Are we Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnson talk? No, but look at the...
By God, that's Peter Schrager's music. That's Peter Schrager's music. Of course he knows. He could probably tell you the 7th and 8th receivers. He could probably tell you about every guy who was on the practice squad last year. Schrager's a wealth of knowledge like that.
The receivers, you could make that argument in Buffalo.
Oh, but we're talking, okay.
That is a fair point. And now you have Orlovsky go, let's rewind there a little bit, because man, that was like the liver shot. You ever watch a UFC fight where a guy lands a punch to the liver and his opponent just crumbles? That was a liver shot. Let's go here.
You could make that argument in Buffalo.
Oh, but we're talking, okay, one, Buffalo had a different, maybe not high-end talent, but 5 or 6 pretty darn good players. Jalen has a bona fide top 3 receiver and another probably top 10 guy. He's got a tight end that's a top 5 guy at the position. Mm-hmm. It's the best offensive line and ball. And
do you hold that against him?
No, you don't hold it against him, but it is.
Then how's he number 9? If you're not holding it against him, then how is he number 9? Like, explain to me how Jalen Hurts is the 9th best quarterback in the NFL, reigning Super Bowl MVP, outplayed Patrick Mahomes in 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years, outplayed the number 1 guy on your list, the one who's considered to be the consensus number 1 quarterback in the National Football League. How is that guy number 9? If you're then saying, well, we're not holding it against him that he has this great offensive line, great running back, great receivers, really good tight end when healthy, we're not holding those factors against him, he should still be number 9. It's bullshit. Like, that is why Orlovsky went... He was like half deciding if he was going to puke or not. You know that feeling. You had a long night of throwing back a few drinks, and you're sitting there, you've met your maker, you're there at the porcelain throne, and you're trying to decide, is this the moment? Is this the moment that I need to have my dinner a second time? And you know that you don't want to. You know that you hate that feeling, but sometimes you know it's going to make you feel better. That's Dan Orlovsky right here. That's Dan Orlovsky. He's trying to decide, do I regurgitate this terrible take and get it out of my system and then provide something new, or do I keep this terrible take inside and deal with the nausea, heartburn, indigestion that it is going to bring me for the rest of the day. That's what this face is right here. All right, we'll continue.
Part of the conversation. It is okay for us to go. It's always about who you're doing it with at the quarterback position. It's a dependent position. So we can hypothetically go, okay, if Herbert's in Philadelphia, is he eclipsing 25 touchdowns? He hasn't done it in 3 years. I would imagine so.
Sure.
If
Hypotheticals, but yeah, you would assume that Herbert would be better in Philadelphia. It's a better situation, sure.
Jalen goes to Los Angeles, is he having that Super Bowl win? It's hard for me to see that. And so
If Patrick Mahomes goes to the Chargers, are the Chargers winning a Super Bowl? I'd argue probably not. And if Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football, if he's the number one quarterback in football, and he can't lead that Chargers team to a Super Bowl, then why are you then going to use that same hypothetical against Jalen Hurts? If you send Josh Allen to the Chargers, are they going to win a Super Bowl? I'd say probably not. If Joe Burrow goes to the Chargers, is he going to win None of these guys on the list going to the Chargers are going to win a Super Bowl. So you also can't use that inverse proportionality. If Hurts were to go to Baltimore, Lamar Jackson's number 4 on the list. If Hurts and Lamar Jackson swap places, would Lamar Jackson be as good or better with the Eagles? There's a possibility that he could be, yeah. Would Jalen Hurts be as good or better with the Ravens? I think he could maybe be as good. I don't think he'd be better. But you would have a good offensive line. You'd have good options on the outside, and you'd have a very good tight end and a fantastic running back in Derrick Henry. That might actually be the fair point. Could you swap Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts? Also, Jaden Daniels here at number 5. Again, it's 1 year. Very good player. 1 year. What's the rationale behind Jaden Daniels being number 5? Again, hasn't had that playoff success. Doesn't have a long career or track record to kind of point back to. If anything, you can maybe even make a case that like a Super Bowl winner Matthew Stafford, who's done it for a very long time, should be given that nod at number 5 over Jaden Daniels, but they're not doing it. Why? Because he's the young, exciting, up-and-coming quarterback. Should the Justin Herbert lovers, should they be upset that Jaden Daniels is in front of Herbert? Maybe. If you swapped Herbert and Daniels, what do those teams look like? Does Jaden Daniels find more success with the Chargers? Maybe. Does Justin Herbert have a better year with the Commanders last year? I don't know. Maybe. Jared Goff is also a fine quarterback. I wouldn't have him ahead of Hurts. How do you have Jared Goff, who couldn't get the Lions into the NFC Championship? How can you have Jared Goff at number 8 ahead of Jalen Hurts? What has Jared Goff won? These are questions. I try to be fair. By the way, also noted on that graphic, if you missed it, players that also got votes for that top 10 included Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, and Bo Nix. I don't know what we're doing here. Honorable mentions included Jordan Love and CJ Stroud. I like CJ Stroud a lot. I can make a case CJ Stroud maybe belongs there instead of Baker Mayfield. Could you try to make a case that Jordan Love should be there instead of Baker Mayfield? Could you make the case that Jared Goff shouldn't be a top 10? I don't know. But this is just wild to me. All right, now I'm going to go out to the comments really quick. Let me throw the comments back on the screen. I took it down for a video, but we're going to go out to some other reaction to the top 10 list because, again, it's absurd. Ford says, these lists are so dumb. Who cares? Jalen has a ring. They can all go pound sand. Ford out. Got to get kids from camp. Good man. Good man. Chris Freed says, the real outrage is that the Eagles defense was denied the MVP award that they earned at the Super Bowl. Andrew Fawcett points out, Daniels only has a year of experience. Amadeus says, Jaden Daniels also has Terry McLaurin, which is correct. Amadeo also noting that by this logic, quarterbacks are only good because of their receivers. KW1323 is here, says it's all shtick. These people come up with these takes that they don't believe just to stir up talk and engagement. C. Salen over on YouTube. I think it's the first time I've seen this name. Thanks for being here. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Says, get real, people. Do you go out the door every day wondering how meaningless people rate you? Come on, we need to stop with this bullshit. Well, you might be right. KW also saying ESP does this kind of stuff all the time. Well, that is true. He does throw out these takes and these lists and these ideas, and sometimes they're off the wall and ridiculous, and it works for him. Continues to work with him. Andrew Fawcett says Brady's the only quarterback who was able to make a Super Bowl champion. I mean, that's fair. There were a lot of not great offenses that Brady oversaw and was able to get to and win Super Bowls with. Now, the defense in a lot of those cases was very good as well. And then he also says, I wasn't a fan until I watched what he did with Tampa. That's fair. C. Salad says, ask these people, where is the Lombardi right now? They can never erase that no matter how much bullshit they sling. That is true. Fawcett saying that, Hurts was cold-blooded in the Super Bowl, which is 100% correct. Okay, now, I want to go back out because I mentioned earlier, the facility got canceled, very sad, over on FS1. We are about to hear from the facility because Emmanuel Acho was on the show and Chase Daniel was on the show. And for as much as we've gotten used to just hearing terrible takes from both Acho and Daniel, I do want to go over to them really quickly because maybe they'll surprise you. Maybe they will offer some insight into this top 10 list that'll make you say, you know what? That ain't right. Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right. All right, let's go out here.
Yeah, looking at that right there, that's awful. And you can think whatever you want to think about Jalen Hurts, but there should never be a list to where Justin Herbert is in front of Jalen Hurts. I don't really care about what type of talent and all that you're talking about. And then Jaden Daniels is going to be a superstar in this league. I truly believe that. But I cannot put him in front of Jalen Hurts, who's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's had 1 good year. Do I think at the end of this, when it's all said and done, could he possibly be better? Yes, absolutely. But
this is fair, by the way. This is fair. We're halfway through. This is a very fair take. There's no world in which Herbert should be ahead of Hurts. And given the fact that Daniels still might eclipse Hurts, he might end up being a better player. Maybe he wins more Super Bowls. It's only been 1 year versus 2 Super Bowl appearances, outplaying Patrick Mahomes twice, winning a Super Bowl MVP. Okay.
Right now, as we're talking right now, after 1 year, no. And then I see Justin Herbert at 7, who hasn't won a playoff game. This boy been to more Super Bowls than you won playoff games. And we're talking about Justin Herbert's a better.
Damn, he's been to more Super Bowls than you've won playoff games. Ooh.
Quarterback to him. I cannot do that. I think this is disrespectful to Jalen Hurts right here. This is an awful list when you have Jalen Hurts at 9 and those 2 dudes in front of him.
So I just want to note really quickly that before I mentioned the fact that Chase Daniel's there, Emmanuel Acho is there. Notice that the smartest take of the show came from neither of those guys. That was James Jones. And right now, we are going to do something as a collective group. We are going to give a roaring round of applause to James Jones for a little bit of decency, a little bit of honesty, and a damn good bit of analysis. Well done, James Jones. Good on you. I hope that even though the facility got canceled, I hope you have a job at FS1 or wherever you want to go, because that's damn good analysis. Maybe we'll bring you here to the Russ Joy Show one day. But great analysis. Now, there's always a yin and yang. There's always a balance that needs to be brought to the force. And that's where you enter, or at least you would think would enter Emmanuel Acho and Chase Daniel. But I might have something to tell you that is going to surprise you. Emmanuel Acho might have actually made some sense of his own. Oh, yeah. I know that you never thought it was going to happen. I know that there's that old adage about, a broken clock being right twice a day. Emmanuel Acho, what's up? How do you feel about the list?
To me, it's absolutely asinine that Jalen Hurts isn't in the top 5, and I would suggest at minimum, bare minimum, top 6. And for me, it's...
Wow! Hold on a second, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on. Hold on to something nearby. Hold on. Is there a handle wherever you're standing or sitting? If you are in the car listening to this in the podcast feed after the fact, please make sure that you have your 4-way flashers ready to go on if you're going to pull off to the side of the road, if you are watching on YouTube, if you are trying to stay out of trouble at work with a headphone in and your boss is walking around and you need to hide this. Try to hold all of this emotion in. Try not to screech or be absolutely shocked by what you just heard. Emmanuel Acho just made sense. Not only did he make sense, he made sense on what is presumably one of the last days of the facility being on FS1. So good on him for going out on a high note. He just made sense. Jalen Hurts should, at the very least, at the very worst, be number 6 on the list, which would mean you'd bump out Matthew Stafford and maybe you'd bump out Jaden Daniels. I can't imagine that he would bump out Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, or Jackson. But the idea that Super Bowl winner, Super Bowl MVP, has to be top 6. Okay. I can see it. All right, we're going to keep going.
Very simple. Jalen Hurts, he wins at a high clip, and I understand that winning and losing, you might suggest, isn't necessarily a quarterback stat, but yes, the Eagles are a good team. There have been a lot of good teams. The Niners in 23 were a really good team. Brock Purdy and that Niners team couldn't get it done. They lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, year 24. The Baltimore Ravens in 2023 were a really good team. Number 1 defense in all.
I'd argue the 2024 team was even better, right? When they had Derrick Henry added to the mix. It was an even better team. They didn't get it done. We'll continue.
All of football. Lamar Jackson couldn't get it done at home in the AFC Championship game, losing to the Chiefs. So you can't just tell me, well, Jalen Hurts has such a good team. There have been a lot of good teams that fall short and been a lot of good teams where the quarterback isn't Super Bowl MVP. Ask Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp how that went when Matthew Stafford finally won.
So Emmanuel Acho is essentially making a similar case to what Traeger and Damian Woody did before, which is you can't just hold the guy having a really good team around him as a reason to hold a quarterback down on these rankings. Okay.
For me, I got Jalen Hurts at 5. And it's simple. And I want to show y'all just a simple reason as to why and metric as to why. Jalen Hurts, regular season All-Pro, he's checked that off. Super Bowl, he's checked that off.
Correct.
Super Bowl MVP, he's checked that off. Disregard Pat, disregard Lamar, disregard Josh Allen. Assume they're all better than Jalen Hurts. Fine.
I kind of figured that's where he was going to go. Rule those guys out. They stay. And I think most people would agree. They have to be in the top 5.
They have something Hurts doesn't have, a regular season MVP. But Jaden Daniels, you ain't got no All-Pros. You ain't got no Super Bowl appearances. You definitely ain't got no Super Bowl MVPs. Justin Herbert, just stop. You have nothing that Jalen Hurts has except a 6'5" stature. Jared Goff, at least you've been to a Super Bowl, but you ain't got no All-Pros. You have no Super Bowl win nor Super Bowl MVP. And Joe Burrow, you don't got an All-Pro, a regular season MVP, a Super Bowl win or a Super Bowl MVP. So how can you list any of these?
All of that's fair.
Quarterbacks ahead of Jalen Hurts? If you're just talking about who throws the ball best from the pocket, different conversation, a conversation I can concede to. But if you're talking about
best thrower from the pocket is certainly not what this list was.
who's the best quarterback, Jalen Hurts is better than all of those quarterbacks. If you want to suggest Joe Burrow, I will listen to that conversation, obviously.
Wow. Emmanuel Acho made sense in the first 10 seconds of what he had to say. And then typically you would think, oh, he's going to step in it at some point. He typically does. And you think, all right, Emmanuel Acho is definitely going to step in some shit here very soon. He just went for about 2 minutes, and he was right on everything across the board. And that is how we know the world is soon about to end. That has to be a signal. I don't remember how many horsemen there were that rode into the apocalypse, but I'm pretty sure that if Emmanuel Acho is going to start making sense, the end of the world is nigh. Okay, so we have that. So Jalen Hurts, number 9 on the list. I have not seen a person yet drop anything in the comments that would say he should be at number 9. I guarantee that when video guy Amadeo clips all this stuff up and puts it on TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, when it all goes out, I guarantee there are going to be some people that are going to argue in a very fervent manner for Justin Herbert remaining where he was and Jaden Daniels being 5 and Joe Burrow somehow being 3. I know that it's going to happen, but we'll see if anybody makes a compelling argument for why. And that's typically what happens the most with these lists. Your hyper-local audiences will defend their own player. There's an inability to kind of see the forest for the trees. But when it gets to social media and it gets to short-form content, it's going to be hilarious watching the infighting because it happens every time. Jalen Hurts should not be number 9 on the list. That is absurd. We're going to continue moving on. You've probably seen this. You had to have seen it. We're going to touch on something really quick because the Phillies are making a little bit of noise at the MLB draft. Just a little bit, not a ton. Nothing crazy is happening yet. Nothing crazy is happening across the board at this point. But the Phillies did something on Sunday that caught the attention of the baseball world, and they kept it going today, where they got maybe the best value pick. Now, they started off the draft taking Gage Wood. And Gage Wood is a guy who threw a no-hitter. He's a guy who a lot of people, for whatever reason, seem to believe is going to somehow end up in the Phillies bullpen in October. I can't imagine that it's going to happen, but weirder things have happened. Earlier this summer, June 16th, Gage Wood struck out 19 batters and threw a no-hitter. And so now everybody's going, all right, you have this bona fide stud who's going to make his way to the Phillies, and can they convert him from being a starter to a reliever and take what is some truly great stuff? I think it was his whiff percentage, right? Opposing batters' whiff percentage was around 46% against Gage Wood on the fastball versus 18% or something whiff percentage across college baseball. It's a wild number. So there's something about that fastball that's special. There have also been these things thrown out that he's got a little bit more to his game than you might expect. Does he have the mental makeup? Does he have the ability to step in right away and be a contributor in a bullpen that absolutely, desperately needs it? It's possible. Now, a lot of people, again, started getting very much in their own thoughts, in their heads, that like this is going to be the guy that's going to save the day. Dave Dombrowski, even if he underwhelms, right? Even if he's a total disaster at the trade deadline, we'll find out what's going to happen with Dave Dombrowski. What will happen with the lovely fella? Is he going to be okay? Is he going to be able to figure out a way to get somebody in here via trade? It might not matter. If you are a big believer in Gage Wood, you might have convinced yourself that he's going to somehow be like a seventh inning guy. And maybe he will be. Weirder things have happened. But the real surprise thus far is that the Phillies have taken all pitchers. I mean, every pick. I believe their first 9 picks of the draft have all been pitchers. And there's one guy that was especially of note. Now, you guys know that around the NHL draft, I said I didn't watch a ton of games from Matthew Schaefer or from Jack Nesbitt or even Roger McQueen, who didn't play that many games in college anyway. And I wasn't watching Eklund play. And I wasn't watching Frondell play. And I couldn't have told you about the ins and outs and every little nuance of James Hagan's game, right? And about Porter Martone. I'm certainly not going to try to tell you that I have any idea whatsoever is going on in the world of baseball prospects. But I will defer to somebody who seems to be pretty damn dialed in on players. And a guy that is viewed as somebody who actually does know what he's talking about when it comes to scouting. And it's a guy who has been a senior writer for MLB Pipeline. He's a guy that you see on your TV quite a bit. He broke down over on the MLB Network the Phillies' choice in the 7th round today. The Phillies took Matthew Fisher in the 7th round with the 221st overall pick. And the reason that I bring it up is because that is significantly below value. Like, this guy was not expected to be a 7th round pick. And on the big board that Callis put together, he was nowhere close to 221. This was not a reach. This was like a blessing. This was a player that fell significantly. And so I'm actually going to bring up Jim Callis' take and why he's in love with this pick for the Phillies at, again, 221st overall, 7th round pick. Let's learn a little bit about Matthew Fisher, because obviously Gage Wood's going to get the most conversation. But let's hear about Matthew Fisher. You can see here, 2025 Gatorade Indiana Player of the Year. Apparently has 4 pitches. Let's hear from Jim Callis.
This is a super interesting pick here, because this is a guy we thought could go in the sandwich round, and at least I didn't jinx myself this year. I'm not expecting this.
The sound is gone. All right, hold on. We're going to try this again. We're going to give this another go. Something went very wrong with our video here. All right, hold on. I got to see if I can get this fixed. This would be bad, bad, very bad. You can't lose the sound. Huh. There was sound, and now there's not. Not great. Did my internet? No, my internet didn't go out. Okay. I'll try to find it. We'll come back around to it. The long and the short of it is that, the sound was working according to Amadeo. Okay, well, then I'll pull it up. You guys can hear it. I can't hear it. I don't know why I've lost the ability to hear the audio, but okay, we'll bring it up over on the show. Hold on. All right, here we go. Jim Callis talking about Matthew Fisher.
This is a super interesting pick here, because this is a guy we thought could go in the sandwich round, and At least I didn't jinx myself this year. I'm not expecting. This is a seven-figure guy. This guy's not signing cheap. The Phillies obviously, have some money. They figured out what it was going to take to sign Matthew Fisher. This is a steal in terms of talent. I mean, this guy was at number 46 on our list. High spin fastball up to 95. He's got, slider and curveball spin rates, aptitude for a changeup. I mean, it's a 4-pitch guy, 6'3", 200 pounds. Like I said, this guy could have been a top 40 pick yesterday. Great get for the Phillies.
So there's this idea that this guy could be a 4-pitch pitcher. There's this idea out there that the Phillies must have figured out what it was going to take to sign him, which certainly makes it sound like there's going to be some actual money that needs to be involved in getting this guy into the organization, get him to actually sign. Hence why, I guess, he fell to the 7th round. But that's a hell of a value pick. We always talk about the idea that, sometimes, for whatever reason, a guy just happens to fall to you at a given position, and it works. And for whatever reason, this guy who was supposed to be, number 46, I think he said, overall on their big board, he falls to 221. You would hope that you know what it's going to take to bring the guy into the fold. So that's an exciting update from the Phillies. That's an exciting update from the draft. But again, 9 picks. They've all been pitchers. Also, what does that tell you about their belief in their position players and that pipeline going forward? That's interesting. Let's see. Chris Freed says, unlike the Flyers draft picks, I've actually seen Wood pitch. Says Wood's issue is his arm health. He can be a number 2 if he stays healthy and improves his secondary pitches, or he can become an absolute dominant closer in the sport over the next 8 years. It'd be great for the Phillies because they don't have that pipeline right now. Like Ryan Kirkring, good pitcher. Should he be your closer? Probably not. We know that Jose Alvarado can be a really good reliever, except he's suspended and can't play in the playoffs this year, which kind of really dealt you hell of a curveball, hell of a wrench in the process. Alex Schwartz over here says, I love the pick of Gage Wood. However, I hate the people saying he can help immediately over Abel if he doesn't get traded and over Painter. I will point out, though, right, I don't think anybody's looking at Gage Wood as being a guy who's going to step into the rotation. I think the idea out there is that, he would immediately just become a bullpen arm for them if he's going to get a call up. That's where he'd have to go. It has nothing to do with the rotation. Mick Abel's been interesting. Andrew Painter, boy, oh boy, don't look now, but the numbers haven't been good. They have not been good. He pitched on Sunday, went 5 innings, gave up 3 earned runs, 6 hits, 4 strikeouts, no walks, allowed 2 home runs. All of the earned runs were allowed in the final 2 innings of the game. He only threw 76 pitches. His ERA is at 5.01 through 12 starts. He's allowed 11 home runs in 12 starts. I cannot tell you that is a good indication of anything that tells you he's going to come in and be a savior if you were to have an injury in this rotation. And remember, when we started the season, the widely held belief was that Andrew Painter was going to be a guy who's going to plug right into this rotation, and that if there were an injury to an Aaron Nola or a Ranger Suarez or a Christopher Sanchez or whomever, Painter was going to be able to slide in. And we kept saying, all right, well, if the rotation's humming along, if Saiwan Walker, right, was going to continue to pitch really well, whose spot does Andrew Painter take? And remember, a lot of people said Ranger Suarez was going to be the guy that was going to come out of the rotation, right, for Andrew Painter because they didn't re-sign Suarez, can't stay healthy, yada, 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 a lefty out of the pen, all that. Painter has not been great. And while they still might view him as a number 1 ace starter down the line, it is going to be really hard if there are actual impact players available at the trade deadline. If teams want Andrew Painter, and you're looking at this 1 to 2 year window with some of these guys still under contract and at their potential peak of their powers or just past it, if you don't deal Painter and he turns out to be like Kyle Drabeck 2.0, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a real problem for this team. Just saying. Okay, that's it on the Phillies. And then the last thing that I wanted to get to is still Phillies related, and it's just a few quotes. Because in recent days, it's come out that Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, they were not selected as all-stars. And then we found out that I think it was Ranger Suarez is the one who came out and said that he was asked to participate in the all-star game. And despite the fact that he had a sub-2 ERA. And apparently both Sanchez and Suarez were apparently offered spots in the All-Star game if they agreed to pitch in the game, but they didn't. And so that came out through The Athletic via the New York Times. But this is like a whole thing. The Phillies slammed Major League Baseball for Sanchez and Suarez both being snubbed from the game. And if you've probably seen these quotes going around, I think there were a couple that, like, it was from Talking Baseball that did the really nice graphics. So we'll throw it to them. But like Castellanos, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto all stood up for their teammates, which I think is a great sign. It's just one of those good, like, I don't care as much about the vibes, right? Like, we know that I'm not as big of a vibes guy as the Phillies like to be, but Nick Castellanos says, it's turning into the Savannah Bananas. Trey Turner says, that's fucking terrible. It's not the All-Star game in the sense that it's the best players go there. It's whoever sells the most tickets or has been on social media the most. That's pretty damning. By the way, Trey Turner probably has the right to say stuff like this because Trey Turner's had arguably an all-star season. Some feel like he might have been a snub. JT Realmuto, who's been the best catcher in baseball for a number of years, maybe isn't this year, but has been the best catcher in baseball for a bunch of years, says nothing against this kid, but those two are deserving of being on the team in the first place. And I was saying that, like, this all came from an article that was published in The Athletic. But Kyle Schwarber was also asked about it. He said, quote, it's unfortunate, but I wish my teammates were there. We know what we have, and I think we're all grateful for what we have. Apparently, as the news spread, I guess it was last Friday, these guys just came out. They stood up for their teammates. And I think that that's the kind of thing that you're looking for in a season where, like, there have certainly been a lot of ups. There have been some downs. There's been that constant question around Bryce Harper's health. There have been some guys that haven't taken that next step. We've talked about it at length on this show. But I think it's a really good thing that you're seeing these veteran guys standing up for the pitchers. Because listen, what you know is that the Phillies starting rotation has been absolutely dominant. And we have talked about this on the show. Without an otherworldly effort from the Phillies starting pitching this year, they're probably not where they are in the NL East. And in fairness, like, there's a chance that they're not even in the mix. I mean, it has been an absolutely Herculean effort that took the Phillies into the All-Star break with the best record in the National League East. So much of it had to do with the starting rotation. It's absurd. Actually, let me see. Can I pull some stats? Can I do that? Is that okay? Because right now in Major League Baseball, when you look at pitching statistics, and we love pitching statistics here at the Russ Joy Show, the Phillies lead Major League Baseball in quality starts with 53. The next closest team is Tampa Bay with 47. And I like to think the quality starts matter. I know that not everybody holds it in the same vein, but I think it's important because that really does speak to the quality of that pitcher and their ability to, like, deliver into games. ERA. Phillies lead Major League Baseball with a 3.28 ERA. That's across all of their pitching, and we know how bad the bullpen has been. Even despite the bullpen pretty much imploding anytime they're called on in a meaningful situation, the Phillies have still somehow been able to put up the best ERA in Major League Baseball, again, built largely on the backs of the starting rotation. You have Christopher Sanchez, who's got a 2.59 ERA, fourth lowest in the National League, had 107 and two-thirds innings as of the post being written, the story being written, which was 12th in the National League, 6th in WAR among NL starters. That's crazy. And then, like, let's build on that because he had a hell of a game to close out the first half of the season where he went out and was absolutely dominant yet again in a win against San Diego where he goes, 7 1/3 innings. He only gives up 6 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. Ho-hum. Another 7+ inning outing from Christopher Sanchez, and he's not an all-star. And Ranger Suarez, not an all-star. But it was important to note, and it was in the story at The Athletic, that the league apparently offered Christopher Sanchez an all-star spot if he agreed to waive the restrictions and make himself available for an inning 2 days after his start, according to one Major League source. Sanchez declined. Major League Baseball told the Phillies a replacement player can only be named to an all-star roster if he agrees to pitch in the game. Sanchez's agent disputed that version of events, saying he is willing to pitch no matter what. And then Turner said, if he's not an all-star, then no one is. So there you go. That's pretty wild. And again, mind you, Ranger Suarez has been pretty damn good. He's been sensational. I mean, on Friday, gave up 3 runs in 6 2/3 innings. That's not bad. He has a 1.94 ERA. What are we doing here? What are we doing? If Sanchez and Suarez aren't starters, legitimately, if they're not all stars, what exactly are we doing? What is Major League Baseball doing? It's the best rotation in baseball. They have one representative. They have Zach Wheeler, who is incredible. One representative as a starting pitcher in the All-Star game with the best ERA in baseball, which has, in fairness, been impacted in a pretty big way by an abhorrent effort by the bullpen this year. One starter made the team. One starting pitcher made the All-Star team. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Now, we will be back on Wednesday, and we'll be back on Friday, and we'll get into more and more of this. I would be interested in knowing, and you can certainly drop this in the regular comments section below the video, or you can leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave a 5-star rating there or on Spotify. Let me know. Are you excited for the All-Star game? Because I'm not. I should be. I probably should be excited about it, but it doesn't have the juice this year. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because Kyle Schwarber's not participating in the home run derby. I don't know if that being kind of like the lead into the All-Star game, if that's why. I don't know if it's because it feels like the Phillies should have had more representation at the All-Star game. But I just don't care this year. I had people texting me this morning, who do you think's going to win the home run derby? I'm like, I don't care. Sleep. I'll probably go to sleep. I'll watch it on the DVR tomorrow. One thing that I do hate about the home run derby is all the commercials. And I get why there are so many commercials, but I hate it. I'll watch it on DVR. I can stay off Twitter long enough to not have it spoiled. But there's I don't care. Now, you guys might end up seeing me live tweet about the home run derby because I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, and maybe I'll end up watching it. But the All-Star game itself, I couldn't care less. I really couldn't. I just hope that anybody who goes and represents the Phillies doesn't get hurt. That's all I care. That's it. Alex Schwartz says, I feel like without the daycare shenanigans, it seems like they're not serious about the baseball they're playing. These comments give me the hope that this team wants to fight. So that Realmuto and Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos, that those guys coming out in support of their teammates does make it feel like there's still that passion there, there's still a fire there. I think it's a fair take, and I think it's a good spot to end on. I'll be back on Wednesday. We'll recap the All-Star game and the home run derby. We'll talk about the NHL schedule release. We'll get into anything else. If anything and everything else happens in Philadelphia sports, national sports, anything with the media, we'll dissect all of it. Maybe we'll get some more news on what's happening with FS1 and those morning shows. But until then, you can find the show on YouTube, Facebook, and X live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can certainly subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find short-form versions of this content on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Pretty much anywhere that there's short-form content, you will find my mug and this coiffed hair or whatever it's doing on any given day. You'll find it in your favorite social media feed. It'll be there. Do us a favor, though. Hit the like on that stuff. It does help. And with this video on YouTube, like the video, share the video, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notified whenever the show goes live. I'll talk to all of you on a wonderful Wednesday, but until then, try to stay dry in this storm. Have a marvelous Monday. I've been Russ Joy. This has been the Russ Joy Show, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Have a great Monday, everybody. I'll talk to you Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.